and welcome to episode 3 of the Charlie Chats Footy podcast with me, Charlie Casson. Thank you very much for locking in. I appreciate it. I know I said this a lot last week, but I just want to say a big thank you to everyone again for listening and supporting it. It is hugely appreciated. This time a month ago, I didn't even have a microphone. I didn't even know I was 100% going to be putting this out. And for the feedback I've been getting and the response and the amount of people listening this early on, it's blown my mind and I really, really appreciate it. So carry on listening. Keep telling your friends and family about it and sharing it. And I've got some wicked guests coming up over the next couple of months. So I'm going to carry on bringing out the content. Stay tuned and hopefully you won't be disappointed. But for this week, it's a bit of a special one-off episode. This is with Darren Currie. Now, for those of you who don't know Darren, he is the manager of Barnet. Now, when the opportunity comes about to get the manager of the football club I've supported my whole life on my football podcast, I couldn't really say no. I couldn't let this opportunity go amiss. So I had to get him on and I'm so thankful I did because we had such a laugh. We had such a good chat. Darren's a top bloke. Very thankful for him for giving me his time. I hope you all enjoy it. Even if you're not a Barnet fan, have a listen because he's a great guy. He's got a great story. He's so passionate about football. And you can really hear it in his voice when he talks about it, and he's so passionate about the football club that he manages as well. I'm not going to keep you all too long. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the next hour is a good one, so have a listen, and I hope you enjoy it. This is episode 3 of the Charlie Chats Footy podcast with Darren Currie. Let's go back to the beginning. Who did you support as a kid?
Yeah, so, and I've done a couple of interviews lately, Chaz, and I go back to my very earliest memory of when I was 2 and 3 years old, and my dad was still playing non-league football, and I don't remember being a football fan per se, but as a kid, and I've done it with my own son, you put them in the kit. So there's photos of me as a 2-year-old in a little Dagenham shirt because my dad played at Wembley Stadium in the FA Trophy in 1977, I think. So he's obviously being a Dagenham player at the time, put me in a kit and what have you. So, and then obviously at the same time, my uncle was a QPR player. So I've got many photos in a QPR strip. So I'd probably say where I grew up as well in Wembley, and with Tony being at QPR, I'd say I was a QPR fan as a kid. But then when I sort of got a little bit older and started to sort of understand football a little bit more myself, I being an 80s boy growing up in the 80s, I was a bit of a glory hunter. So it was Liverpool in them days, mate. John Barnes and Kenny Dalglish, Ian Rush, all that lot, Jan Molby. So I was a QPR fan to start, but then quickly moved over to Liverpool because they won everything.
So talking about that, then, what's your first football memory? Like when you think of football, what's the first thing that comes into your head as a young boy?
There's a couple of things really. You can, like I say, I got these photos that sort of jog a memory of when I was 2 and 3. But my first sort of major memory is, I think I was 6-7 years old, and I was at Loftus Road, and I'd gone on the pitch. Me and my cousin were mascots, and I was, as probably everyone is in this lockdown, they're finding things to do around the house. So one of my jobs the other day was sort out the loft, and I found a big box of old photos, and I'm rattling through this box, and there's all photos of me and my cousin with the whole QPR squad, like on the pitch, obviously just before kickoff because we were mascots. So that's probably my first memory of being in a stadium, if you like. And then, so I was born in 74. So my first proper experience of a football game of any magnitude was the 82 Cup final of Tottenham QPR, and obviously Tony and my idol at the growing up, and I still worship him anyway, is Glenn Hoddle. So I had my uncle and Glenn on the pitch in 1982 at Wembley, and I was there as a fan supporting.
Who was playing for Spurs them days then, alongside Hoddle?
I think it might have been the likes of Garth Brooks and Steve Perryman, might have been that lot, but I
Mm.
only had eyes for Hoddle, mate. I was mesmerised by him as a kid. Um, but I'm sure that was the era of maybe Archibald and people like that. But there was a lot of back in the day when I was growing up, I found that there was quite a lot of, and I know Tony gets labelled as a bit of a maverick, and there was quite a few in every team back in the day. When I think about each team had three or four that you could probably name as being that sort of eye-catching player, but there was no one for me growing up like Glenn Hoddle.
Being in the playground as a boy, Glenn Hoddle was the one you looked up to and wanted to be.
Yeah, I mean he was technically wonderful and hell of a player to watch. He had everything, but with the long hair, I've had some silly haircuts, as you know, over the years, and so I had the mullet as well, and I rolled my shorts up right up my backside as well, like he did. They were about 2 inches long, my shorts. Had my shirt hanging out, so yeah, I was trying my hardest to be Glenn. But yeah, I mean, he was some player, mate, and growing up, he was just everything I wanted to be.
So just on that, at what age did you know you were going to be a professional footballer?
Well, there's kind of knowing that I'm going to be a professional and wanting to be, and I remember from very early, like primary days, I was just obsessed with the ball. It's all I ever wanted to do. Like the modern day kid comes home from school and there's computers and iPads and iPhones and Xboxes and what have you. Back in my day, it was get home from school, have a quick snack, get a kit on, and meet all your mates at the grass and chuck a couple of coats down and kick a ball around until until the sun went in. So it was an obsession of mine from a very young age. But and we all dream as kids to be a professional. And I played for school and county and borough, and I had a really good Sunday morning team, and that's where I eventually got picked up, and then I got my YTS, and it was only then that you realise that here we go, like this is where it matters now, and I was fortunate enough that I come through the other side of my YTS at West Ham and became a pro, but it was the drive in me from a kid was always there, but you obviously got to work hard to get the opportunity.
Mm. So like I said, you become a pro. You started off at West Ham. 4 years later, 5 years later, 24 years old, you signed for Barnet from Plymouth. I mean, you had 3 seasons with us in your playing days, made over 140 appearances.
Mm.
How did you find that period of your career at Underhill over those 3 years?
I loved it, Chaz. To be honest, I let me say this at the start. I don't regret playing for any club that I played for. Some I done better for, some I enjoyed more, but I don't regret playing for any of them. If someone had said to me at the very start of my YTS days, you'll play over 600 games and you'll play in some great games, you'll play in some games that will disappoint and live with you forever. Um, but for what I wanted to do when I was a kid, to get that opportunity was great. And I played. I never managed to break into the first team at West Ham, which even just 1 minute would have been an achievement, but it never happened, and so be it.
When you were at West Ham in your youth days, who was sort of the main man at that time?
What, within the youth team?
Well, no, within when you were trying to break into the first team, what players were in that West Ham first team there?
See, I had the likes of Mad Dog. He was in the team.
Oh,
Um,
was he?
so Mark was in the team, and I had people like Ian Bishop, who's a wonderful footballer, two-footed midfielder, brilliant player. John Moncur, another one in midfield with him and Martin. John Moncur was a terrific player as well. Frank McAvenny, Tony Cotty. I had Alvin Martin, Tony Gale at the back. These were all first-team players, and I was a kid and obviously it was back at the old Upton Park, which was a incredible stadium and atmosphere. So these boys, I mean, the two sort of widies at the time. There was a youngish guy called Matty Holmes who was a very technical player, really good player, and then Stuart Slater, who was a bit more of a household name at the time. Now Stuart was a brilliant player, one of West Ham's better players at the time I was growing up. and they were ahead of obviously in the first team and where I was trying to get to. But then I had, I had people like Matty Holland and Danny Williamson in my youth team that went on to obviously carve out careers, and that Danny unfortunately finished early through an injury. These were the times where I didn't quite get into the first team, and I went out to Shrewsbury and had a good loan spell, and then signed there permanently for a small fee, and then had a loan spell at Plymouth, and then my chance come around to come back to Barnet under Stilley, and that all come about because Stilley, being an East End boy, had followed West Ham and knew about all the reserve games and youth team games, and he'd followed me and my sort of very small career at the time, and the opportunity come about that we had a meet and had a chat, and he said come and sign for him. And to be fair to John, and I know some people have, we all get our critics, and I know that, but John was good for me when I played for him, certainly at Barnet, because he kind of built, I wouldn't say built the team around me, but what he allowed me to do was be in the team for what I was capable of doing, and having people like Sam Stockley, who is my best mate. Stocks would sort of do the legwork behind me and done what he done, and John allowed me to pretty much hug the touchline and do my bit on the wing. But it was really Barnet where I felt that I started to create a bit of my own profile. I'd sort of scratched the surface at Shrewsbury and what have you, but it was Barnet where I started to create my own name, really.
If I said to you September the 11th, 1999, do you know what date I'd be talking about?
Is it a good one or a bad one? Because
it's a good one. It's a good one. We're top of Division 3. I'll give you another clue.
We go to Swansea. Yeah, we go to Swansea. Yes.
I believe that goal won goal of the season that year. For those of you who haven't seen it, if you're listening, just type in Darren Curries Swansea. It comes up. I mean, it would be fair to say you took the absolute piss with that, with those, with those the three Swansea defenders not knowing where the heck they're going.
I remember it well, and it was a great day all round. I mean, listen, when I remember turning up at the Vetch, and if I remember rightly, is there not a prison or a jail or something just outside the Vetch? I'm sure it was local to the area, and I think it was one of the first times I'd played at the Vetch, and I knew there was an atmosphere there. I knew that the Swansea fans were quite passionate, and I was getting loads of grief, like I always did, but some of it I deserved because I had bloody silly highlights, and people used to sing Rod Stewart songs to me and Kajagoogoo songs and what have you. Every time I took a corner, people would break into a song and take the piss out of me. Which, listen, I deserved it. At the end of the day, I'd do it myself. So I'd been getting a little bit of flack from the Swansea mob on the side I was playing that day, and then obviously, if you watch that goal, certainly on YouTube, and that you see me go and sort of cut my ear to the fans, and that was me basically saying, "Yeah, go on then, sing your song now." But whenever I played against them after that game, they certainly gave me a little bit of grief after that. But no, it was that was, I would say, like a typical me, wasn't it? I do that chopping and changing direction in my nice slow manner, and I ended up with a nice finish, and it got me goal of the season. But certainly proud of it, mate.
Yeah, you should be, mate. It's an absolute banger. So we got we just spoke about a good memory. I now want to talk about this is quite special to me because this is actually my first ever game. 2001 at home to Torquay at Underhill. It was the last game of the season that year. Like I said to you, it was actually my first game. I think I'd just turned 7. And I just remember, talking about earliest football memories, I just remember the crowds of people queuing up to get in the ground. It was absolutely bonkers. Being a 6-year-old, seeing that in your hometown. I mean, it was way over capacity. For those of you who are listening right now who don't know what this game was, it was very simple. Basically, one team got relegated at the Football League that year. Before the game, Barnet were bottom. Torquay was second bottom, 1 point ahead of us. It was literally winner takes all. Whoever won stayed in the Football League. Whoever lost was getting relegated. Now, before we touch on the game itself, Darren, I just want to ask you what it was like building up to that game with the stakes so high.
Listen, you know you're going into a game that has massive importance. So you, as much as you try to just treat it as any other game. You know it's not the case, and it's I remember, and it was even obviously quite early in my career and that, but I still knew the size of the game, and I remember just thinking to myself, just try and do what you do, and just play how you play, and I think although the season itself had led to that crucial point, I think I'd had a decent enough season with goals and assists, so I was comfortable with the sort of form I was in. I think obviously what you're going to lead on to as well with the penalty, but I'd taken the one or two penalties in games leading up to that game. So I felt confident, but obviously fully aware of the size of the game. And then, like you touched on with the fans and that on that day, I remember coming out for the warm up, and there was people up lamp posts and telephone pylons and climbing up the back of stands and that. I mean, it was the game to be at, and the place was absolutely packed out. So from the minute you got there, you knew the importance of the game, and you knew the size of the game. And if you could put the occasion to one side and just play it for what it was a great game to be involved in, because not only the importance, but how busy the Underhill was at the time.
Torquay ended up winning 3-2. Now, I know you just mentioned it. I think, it was inevitable. I was going to ask you about this. You missed a penalty just before half-time to make it 2-1. Now, obviously, crucial point in the game, proved to be the turning point. What was going through your head stepping up to take that in front of the sold-out Underhill?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I'd played in recent games, and I may have scored 2 or 3 penalties leading up to it. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, he may have watched my last penalty, and I may be wrong with this, Chaz, so I'm just going purely off memory. I think my last penalty that I took before that game, I'd pushed to my right. I may be wrong. I may be getting my wires crossed, but I'm sure I pushed my penalty prior to that game to the right. So I thought I'll go to my left this time, sort of across my body. And listen, I've missed 1 or 2 penalties over my career. Not one with that sort of amount of importance riding on it. But listen, I would still now expect to score and back myself to score, but I didn't, and I obviously got to live with it. It was a you shouldn't. I've hit the target, but even now with Simeon and 1 or 2 other people that take penalties, I'm the same as anyone. I expect a goal. You got a free shot from 12 yards, and I expect a goal, and I expected a goal when I took it myself. So I've got to live with it. It's not something I'm sort of proud of, but obviously it gets brought up, and I've got to live with it. It was a miss, and it proved costly.
That game ended up being your last game for the club, right?
Yeah.
With that being your last game, club getting relegated to the conference, you missing the penalty, 20 years later, you find yourself at the helm, the gaffer of Barnet, back in the National League where we went to, where we got relegated to on your last game. Is there a feeling of, I've got some unfinished business here?
I mean, it's unfinished business. You can put it that way. I mean, I certainly feel like I owe the club. There's no doubt about that. I've wanted to be successful for the club to kind of cancel out that moment in the club's history and in my history, although it will never get cancelled out. It's there in black and white. But, it's although that is a moment that gets spoke about, and rightly so, you have to take the rough with the smooth, and, I've got to live with that. It was probably it's the only moment of my Barnet playing days that I really go, do you know what? I kind of wish I could change it. But the rest of it was, I love playing at the club. Like I say, I felt like it kick-started my sort of rise, if you like. And, to be back at the club now that I was so happy at, and I did enjoy playing for. There's no doubt about that. It allowed me to grow as a person and as a player and express myself. And I kind of went from strength to strength from the club. But, being back now, I enjoy being back as the manager. And I stated from day one, I'd love to be the man that takes us back to the Football League, which will, in my own mind, will give me a little bit of peace of mind after the penalty miss.
I mean, and just on that season, I think you got in the Division 3 Team of the Year 2 years out of 3, I believe.
Yeah.
Or 2 consecutive years.
Yeah.
Did you want to leave? Honestly, with us going in the conference and you had offers from Division 3 and Division 2, what's going through your mind sort of that summer?
I don't think it's a case of wanting to leave. I think that whether it was me at that time or as I've witnessed throughout my career and even now as a manager, when you come to the end of the season, 9 times out of 10 you lose players that have done well in that season or have had a good spell at the club. So I think there was a lot of talk that season about moves and transfers for not just myself but 1 or 2 others as well. And I don't think going down changed the fact that there was a chance I could leave in the summer because the offers, 1 or 2 offers were there, and the club, and in particular John Steele, was very aware of my drive to sort of climb up the league. So I wouldn't say it was a case of we've been relegated, so I want to leave. I think there would have been a good chance that I was going whatever the outcome of that game.
So you sort of after you left us, you just started to rise up the leagues. Really, you had a great few years at Wickham. You had a season at Brighton. You're then in the Championship at Ipswich. Where you made a name for yourself, got to the playoffs. I want to talk about one of your loan spells, though. Actually, at Derby. Now you went Derby from Ipswich, sort of the back end of the season, early 2007. You're only there for two and a half months, I think. Played 7 games. But like I said, you're there for the business end of the season, which ends up with Derby getting promoted to the Premier League at Wembley.
Yeah.
First ever Championship playoff final at the new Wembley, I think it was. Like, what was that day like at Wembley for you, being on loan at Derby? It must have been bittersweet. What was it like?
I'm not. Do you know what, Chaz? I don't look at moments in my career in that kind of way. It was, listen, it's always gutting. It's always gutting when you get left out of a squad. And, even on that day in particular, I didn't make the bench. But I was still such a football person, like I am today still, that I looked at it and I went, there's still something to enjoy here. Don't get me wrong, absolutely pig sick that I weren't involved. Of course I was. I wanted to play. I wanted to be on the bench. I wanted to come on. I wanted to be a part of it. But I didn't let the fact that I wasn't affect the opportunity to enjoy the day. And the fact that we won the game and we sort of celebrated and enjoyed it, having been so close the season before with Ipswich, and then, so sadly missing out on it, I made sure that I enjoyed that moment, even though I didn't get to put my boots on and go on the grass. But it was still a great day. I'd still rather have it in my history than not have it. So I look at it and go, yeah, bit gutted that I weren't involved, but at the end of the day, it was still a pleasure to be there around the team. And having been on loan, I'd only played the 7 games and I'd played my very, very small part. But the boys that went out there that day, and I'm still in contact with quite a few of them, the boys that went out there and sweat blood for the club and got the club promoted deserved it, because they'd had a brilliant season, and obviously I was just there at the very end to sort of enjoy along with them.
And did you ever hope that your tenure with Derby would have carried on into the Prem? Did you ever think there was an offer there on the table? Did you have a chance of, making a move?
Yeah, there was. I mean, when I look back and I think about how deals are pieced together now, should I have put something in my contract that said, or should my agent have, well, if we go up, an automatic 1 year kicks in. I mean, there's so many different clauses that agents and players put into deals nowadays. Should I have done that? Possibly, but, I've been guilty for my whole life and my whole career of backing myself. And I thought, do you know what? I'll go there and I'll show that I'm worthy of not only being here, but if we go up, staying here. But it didn't happen. And I'm not, Chaz, I'm not a regretful person. It's not, I don't regret that it was a very short and sweet and enjoyable time there. And it was another opportunity that sort of just flashed past my eyes of Premiership football. But it didn't happen, so I don't regret it, but I enjoyed my time there.
Now I want to go back to Barnet. We had a great and long overdue FA Cup run last year, which we could sit and talk about for hours. But I want to touch on the third round at Bramall Lane. I'll tell you now, right? I've supported Barnet, like I mentioned to you at the start, 20 odd years. And it's the best day out and the best feeling I've had following the Bees, without a doubt. I mean, nobody gave us a chance. I think they were first or second in the Championship at the time. We were mid-table in the National League. To go up there and play like we did and to come back with the win, I mean, it was something special. And for you, on a personal level, to do it at a club where, you mentioned your Uncle Tony at the start, where he's so highly regarded. I think he got voted the best ever Sheffield United player in a stadium with a stand named after him. I mean, it must have been a special day for you.
It's going to be hard to top that type of moment. I mean, with everything that had gone on, with only being in the job a week, it was a crazy week, obviously, with John leaving in the first place, me getting... I mean, I sat down with the chairman and he said, I'll give you 3 or 4 games just to see how you get on. Nothing was set in stone. So I looked at the games and it was Dagenham away and Bournemouth at home. So you've got my old club, you've got a local derby, and you've got Sheffield United away who are flying high in the Championship. And I thought, well, this will certainly test me. And I made the reward of what we done at Sheffield United. I can look back at the Dagenham game and think it, and I think back to how I spoke with the boys in the change room before the Dagenham game and the sort of freedom I give them to play with. And they went out against Dagenham. We played some good stuff and we moved the ball around well. And I felt like the shekels had come off a little bit, and we obviously won the game, which was very pleasing. We then took that into the Bournemouth game and we drew, but I thought we played well on the night. So there was a sort of air of confidence about us all of a sudden. It's never easy, Chaz, when you take over a team. Not that I've done it, obviously, but what I've learned how important a pre-season is in stamping your ideas onto a team. So to take over the team halfway through a season on the back of Bournemouth away on Boxing Day, which was a real miserable day for everyone. We just swung the mood round in that week, and we took it all up to Sheffield United. And the most important thing that me and Junior wanted to get into the team was about playing with no fear. It's easy to say, and it is easy to say, and I'm sure many have said it in the past and will continue to say it. But just go out there and play with no fear and play with a freedom. Enjoy the day because you're playing at a wonderful stadium. And ultimately, and I still believe it to this day, we've got some good players at the club. And when you've got people like Shaq up front, and when you've got people like Ephron Mason-Clark, who I think the world of, Jack Taylor, who's gone on and is only going to go on and do better and better. When you've got these types of players, it's my responsibility to take the shekels off them and let them enjoy their football. And we went out on the pitch at Bramall Lane, and you can just hear that noise from the players about the pitch and the surface and the grass, it's perfect, and the stadium, they're all looking around, and they're great moments in your career, and I wanted them to enjoy it. Now, as you are aware, the best moments you enjoy is because ultimately you win, and what we done on that day was not only win, but we played very, very well. And the feeling I had after that game, I'll never lose that feeling.
What was it like with us lot behind the goal?
I could still be standing there now, Chaz, if I'm being honest, but they wanted to kick us out. Listen, them moments, listen, if you're at the very top, you can feel them moments regular and all the time. And that's what we all want. We want them moments where, the fans were connected, the players were buzzing, the mood in the change room afterwards was great. We drove when we got on the bus, and we drove. I let the boys have a couple of beers on the way back, and we stopped off somewhere, and loads of fans jumped on the bus and celebrated with the boys. I was just thinking, my God, this is just how I thought it would be. It's perfect. So when we come over to you guys at the end of the game and celebrate, it was brilliant, mate. But I have to say this, and I have said it in previous interviews. Chrissy Wilder on the day was first class. He waited for us, and obviously it's difficult when you've just been beat, but he waited for every one of our team, and he shook everyone's hand and congratulated them on the victory. So he deserves a lot of credit for that, Chris. He's a top guy.
There's a video online as well of from the Sheffield United press box after obviously you lot had all come over to us and we were clapping you and stuff and singing. When you finally all went back down into the tunnel, a lot of the Sheffield United fans in that stand had stayed behind and were giving everyone a standing ovation.
Chaz, and I'll be honest, I like that and I respect that massively. But I felt the boys deserved it. I thought they were really good on the day, and I've watched the game back about 10,000 times, and I weren't being sort of overconfident on the day. And I've watched it back, and I thought we've done more than held our own here. We've actually played some good stuff, and I do genuinely believe that we could have won it by another goal or two, possibly. And that's not being greedy because I'm happy with how the day went. But we played some really good football on the day. I didn't overcomplicate tactics with the boys because I didn't want to, and I still don't to this day. I don't overcook the opponent because I want it to be about us, and I can't keep telling my team to play with no fear and then spend all the build up to the game talking about the opponent because it kind of contradicts itself. So, on the day we were brilliant, mate, and I'm glad they got the clap at the end of it because they deserved it, and it was just a great day for everyone, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was an amazing day, and I think I speak on behalf of all Barnet fans when I say it's up there in the top away days we've ever had. Obviously, you were into the fourth round. I think we were the only non-league team left. We were watching the draw as fans, and I'm sure you guys were as well. You want Liverpool to come out. You want United, Newcastle, any of that. When Brentford at home comes out, I mean, it's a bit of an anticlimax. I'm not going to lie to you, but just when you think the drama was done, we get Brentford, and I mean, I'm still speechless now thinking about being in the West Stand at the Hive watching that. I mean, it was something else, wasn't it?
Well, I was like you, Chaz, and I ain't going to lie to you either. When Brentford come out, and I think there was only about 6 or 7 teams left in the hat that we could have drawn, and there was a couple of big ones in there still. And when Brentford come out, there was a part of me that sort of was a bit deflated, and then there was the part of me that goes, "We got a chance. We got another chance here." But then, wow, the build up to that, and obviously on the back of the Sheffield United game, and then, again, I mean, I'm fortunate in a very sort of short managerial career to have these 2 games to sort of play back in my mind and watch again. The atmosphere at the Hive on that night against Brentford was absolutely unbelievable, mate. And I watched the game again today because one of the fans had put it on Twitter. So I watched the game back again today. And there's times, and I remember thinking at times I was acting like a fan because I was kind of watching it and kicking every ball, and I'm thinking, and then I remember thinking, shit, I'm the manager as well. I've got to look at this from a tactical point of view. But I was kind of enjoying the game myself, and then all of a sudden you've got to go, oh, we might need to make a change and have to switch back into manager mode. But it was just the atmosphere with all the flags and all the smoke bombs going off and that. Oh, what a night that was.
It makes sense now you saying that about you being a fan because I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen it, but there's that amazing clip when Sparks scores the free kick. You just turn around, you make that face towards the Brentford fans. You're like, I don't even know what you do. You're just walking on the pitch, like,
Do you
God
know what
knows.
it is, Chaz? Like, so where the tunnel is, where we come out. So that's where my family was sitting. My brother was down there, so I kind of run on the pitch, and I've got this funny walk going on that my brother still rips me to bits about. But I'm kind of looking for him as I'm walking on the pitch, and I can't see him because everyone's jumping up in the air, and that's why I ended up sort of entering the pitch and looking for him, and then I've turned back round and pulling funny facials and that. But I mean, what a free kick! And again, like I felt with the Sheffield United game, I felt we deserved something out of that game that night. Listen, they're a very, very good team, and some of their movement and their passing patterns and what have you is top drawer, and they were. And listen, I still have my feelings on the penalty situation, but um, they're a very good side with a centre forward who went on to the Premier League for millions. But we 100% deserved at least a draw out of that game.
Do you know what, mate? Looking back at it now, from what we spoke about at the start, it's probably a blessing we didn't win that replay because you would have had to gone to Swansea and got absolute pelters.
Yeah, but the new stadium, I might have been the other side to all the naughty boys who were behind the fence back in the day. But listen, you got to take that as it comes, Chaz. I can walk into some grounds and get a clap, and walk into some grounds and get loads of verbal. That's football, mate.
Now, I think it'd be nice to lead on to this because, what we've been talking about, fans and the players united, I feel like the club hasn't been this together for a while. And I think that's testament to you and Junior's leadership and the way you both want the club to be going forward. So where do you see us in the next couple of years?
Well, ultimately, I mean, if we just talk about this season to the point we're at now, my drive, a lot of my feelings about how I want to try and connect everyone again has been based on how it was when I played for the club. So, a quick example of you had to walk through the bar at Underhill to get back out to your car, and 9 times out of 10 we'd stop there. If we, there's a few of us, we'll have a beer, we mingle with the fans, and we have a chat, and people get to know each other, and that's the club that it was, and that's the club that I wanted it to be again. So it is important to me, and it will continue to be important to me that there is that connection. Listen, there's going to be a few bumps along the way because no one wants to lose, and I've had some grief and that, and I get it. I get it because there's been some games that I deserve it, and the team deserve it. So there's no issues there. But getting everyone together, absolutely no doubt, gives us a better chance of being successful. And we went to Barrow in November and we got beat, and I got some grief after that game, and we had a very big sort of heart to heart in the change room. And I would never really slaughter the players and make it personal, but this conversation was really about, me just drumming into them. Listen, boys, you're a good set of players and you're good people as well, and we can do better than this. And there was no doubt about it. And the players know how I am. They get to speak their mind, and no one could have predicted after the Barrow game that we'd go on the run we went on. We ended up something like, I mean, what did we end up after the Woking game? Maybe one defeat in 17, was it? And I think we could have finished this season and still have a glimmer of hope that we can. But I do think we could have finished this season and been successful and got in the playoffs and got promoted. But how I see this club going forward is how I've seen it from the minute I took over the day before the Dagenham game. I want everyone together. I want it to be together, even over the bumps, Chaz. I know there's always bumps. The best teams in the world have a few bumps, but I don't want it to be so that every time we win, it's great, and every time we lose, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to all of us. You know what I mean? There needs to be that. There needs to be that sort of togetherness that gets us through them sticky moments, and that's how I see it. And I listen, I'll live and die by my decisions I make, as I have done. So being together as a club is going to be massive for me, and I'll keep driving that. But the ultimate target is to get the club back in the Football League where we all think we should be.
It's so frustrating because obviously what's happened has happened with, coronavirus and the lockdown and the season being cancelled and all that, and there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, that Woking game, I spoke to you about this early in the week. We went there. Well, I went there and I just felt on the train there, I just felt that night was the start of the running. I just felt it. There was something about it. It was our game in the hand. No one else, I think there was one other game going that night. Notts County were playing someone. And I just thought, if we win this, we're 1 point off with 3 games in hand. And I thought, this is it. This is the game, the start of the running. And I think that was our last game, wasn't it?
Yeah, last game.
We played so well as well. And I mean, I got to mention Josh Walker. I've not seen a finisher. I mean, we've had John Akindi. John Akindi, he's quality. I mean, he's one of the best strikers we've ever had. But I personally believe he plays to his strengths, right? I don't think he's a natural finisher. If it wasn't for his height and his pace, he probably wouldn't score as many goals as he does. But Josh Walker, I can't remember a better finisher at the club since we had Isel McLeod. He's just different gravy in front of goal.
Do you know what, Chaz? I worked with, when I was a sort of young coach, I was taking the under-21s at Dagenham, and we had Dwight Gale at the time. And Dwight Gale stuck out like a sore thumb because, for me, like the best strikers at any level, however the ball sits, they've got the technique or the answer to get a finish away. Now, Josh is, and you see it Monday to Friday, his finishing ability in front of goal is outstanding. And you can even ask Lochi about him because he's hard to read, he's hard to predict. And whether the ball sits on his right, whether it sits on his left, whether it's bobbling, whether it's bouncing, whether it's a volley, he has got every technique you need in front of goal. And for him to have the season he's had, for being a young man who's first time at this level, he's only going to get better and better, mate. And I've got to be honest, his ability in front of goal, and even on that night at Woking, he scored a couple of crackers, didn't he? In particular, the first one, I think, where he dinked it over the keeper. But he's one of them that you almost, when he gets in front of goal, you expect the goal and you're more shocked when he don't score. Do you know what I mean? Because of his technical ability in front of goal. But he's a great kid as well. I tell you what, he has got. He's got a little arrogant chip on his shoulder as well, which is a good chip. It ain't a bad chip. He's got that, his shoulders back. He kind of don't give a shit about anyone around him. And that's not a bad thing to have. That's a ruthless streak that I like in him. And him and Simeon have had to lead the line for us this season. They've been brilliant, the pair of them.
Oh, they've been unbelievable. Especially, Sim, I think he'll agree, when he was with us, when he first came to us, he found it hard to, get a run going. And even I've been shocked this season when, the games you don't get to and you see it pop up on Twitter and it's like, oh, Simeon scored again. And I mean, he's proven us wrong. I mean, he's proved me wrong. He's absolutely been bashing them in for fun.
Do you know what, Chaz? He come to me in pre-season and he said to me, and I've got a good relationship with the players and they know they can speak openly with me. And Sim come to me and he's like, Dad, I think I could play up front. And I was like, Sim, I ain't so sure, but I'll give you a go. We'll have a look at you. And he went up there, and he can jump. To be fair to him, can't he? So he's not bad in the air, and he's quick, and he's a powerful boy. So he's not bad with his back to goal. Can be better. He knows that. I'm not speaking out of turn. But do you know what? And with Simeon, it was about just giving him that little bit of confidence. He needed the confidence in himself again because of his injury. So he's quite a deep thinker, Sim, and he needed to have that confidence within his own ability again. And he wants that backing from myself and Junior. And to be honest, he's probably the name I shout out more than any other name from the sideline because you have to stay on him and you have to keep him like doing the right things. But he just got better and better within the role, and he kept getting goals, and then his confidence up. And he just got better as the season went along, and then they started to form a nice partnership, him and Josh. And then obviously we brought Macca in as well to add to the mix. But certainly them two, I think. I mean, you might be able to correct me. I think Josh finished with 16 and maybe Sim with 17, which is
I think it was,
something
something like
around
that.
there. So that's a great return from the pair of them when you consider Sim's not a
Mm.
centre forward by trade, and obviously Josh is sort of young and first time playing regular at this level. And when you've got players like that, like Josh and Simeon and Efron, people that have got good feet and they're quick. If you're a centre half that's been playing for 75 minutes and you see one of them coming on, it's the last thing you want to see, isn't it? You know, somebody who's
Mm.
and because of their attributes, we're constantly talking to them about running in behind and getting on the shoulder and playing in between people. And the three of them, I feel for Efron a bit this year because he's been a bit stop start through injury. But he's a terrific player with a huge future. But the other two, just they become a really lethal pair in the end.
You mentioned McCallum. You probably might not know, but what's the situation with him now? Now all this has happened, and he was only on loan.
Listen, Chaz, I wanted Macca from day one, mate. Any team at this level that's got Paul McCallum as their number 9 has got a chance of being successful. That's how I see it. I wanted him from the summer. I wanted him from the minute I took over before the Dagenham game. I knew that, and the reason I know it, obviously the stats back it up anyway, but Macca is someone who will get all sorts of goals, but he's a bit of a throwback in terms of how many he gets with his head as well. And I've always been confident in our play that we can get up to the final third, and it's what you do in the final third, and it's what you do in both boxes. That's the facts of football. But certainly when I believe all our approach play, we could get to the final third, but we needed that someone who just don't even have to do a great deal in the game, but can just sniff out a goal, be in the right place at the right time, bully a couple of centre halves, and get goals. And I knew Macca's that. I knew he was that player. We couldn't get him in the summer, and then I took a phone call about him being available. Obviously, just before he come on loan, and I non-stop asking, "Come on, we got to get him. He'll be the difference for us." And he come through the door, and I think he got 5 in 6 in the end. But it was his all-round play, great lad as well, but just a goal getter, knows how to score goals. At the minute, I think his loan deal's come to an end now because there was a clause in it about extension if we made it into the playoffs. So I've got a feeling that might be at an end now. And whether we can get him for next season, mate, I would say it's doubtful because of the financial implications that come with him,
That's
which
understandable.
disappoints me, mate. But I also understand, I understand the money side of it, but it's a tough one for me because I know that someone like Macca can be the difference.
Now, I've had some emails and tweets over the past couple of days just from Bees fans wanting to ask you some
Yep.
questions. What is the toughest team talk you've had to do since being gaffer at Barnet?
Yeah, I probably touched on it. About the Barrow game, and it was at the end of the game where, like I said, we'd been beat, we hadn't played well. Listen, being beat's tough enough. Just the result speaks for itself. But when you haven't performed to your capabilities, it's a double blow. And I took a lot of verbal at the end of that game, which goes with a job, goes with a result. So I get it. People speak their mind, and they're entitled to do that. So I have no issue whatsoever. We had to draw a line in the sand in the change room, and we spoke, and the players spoke, and I just told them my beliefs and my feelings. I let them speak, and listen, like I said to you, no one could have. I didn't walk out of there thinking, right, we're only going to win one out. We're only going to lose one out of our next 18. I walked out of that change room happy that we'd had the conversation we had, and looking forward to a reaction. Now the reaction turned out to be a positive one, which was good. But that was tough because when you're a player, you can get some stick and you can get some flack as a player, and very quickly you can get another game to turn it round. As a manager, you take criticism for everybody, and I'm responsible. That's the job I'm in. That's the job I want to be in, and I had to shoulder the responsibility for everyone at the club, which is rightly so. But it makes it that little bit harder. So coming home from the Barrow game was tough for me, but thankfully after that clear the air chat, we kind of turned the corner and went on a decent run.
Joe Collum wants to know: do you plan to be at Barnet long term?
That's a tricky one at the minute because, obviously with the current situation, I'm not very clear on my own position at the minute. I know obviously the club and everyone's going through the time we're going through, and I've been furloughed, which is understandable, and I've been put in my notice period. So I'm a little bit unclear, if I'm being honest, Chaz. I certainly am making plans to be back and have a push at it next year, but it's a little bit unclear. But I don't want that to raise any sort of further questions or uncertainty. I just think it's the current situation the whole country and the whole world finds it in, ourselves in. Everything's a little bit uncertain at the minute.
I think you mentioned your highest moment. Chris wants to know your lowest and highest moment as a manager so far. Would it be right in saying Bramall Lane?
Yeah, I mean it goes without saying that's going to be tough if I'm manager for the next 20 years. That's going to be a tough game to beat because the importance of the game for the club and only being a manager for bloody 1 week with the family connection, that is going to be a tough game to beat. As will the Brentford home game, because that atmosphere will live with me forever. So, and then lowest point, I mean, what a come down that was when we beat Sheffield United, and then we go and get spanked at bloody Braintree the following week, and we lose Mark Cousins, and it sort of, on the back of such a high, to ever come down like that is, I don't ever want to be in that position again, mate.
Now, this is a little something I'm going to be asking all my guests at the end of each episode. It's going to be actually interesting hearing it from you, from an ex-footballer and a current manager. But if Darren Currie was an actor and you had the chance to play a footballer, past or present, on the big screens in a biopic of their life, who are you going to play?
Well, it'd have to be Bex for me, mate. I mean, listen, I've been a big Beckham fan for a number of reasons, but mainly obviously because of his football ability. And it's only now, if I'm being honest, Chaz, that I think he gets the recognition that he should have got when he was playing. Now people talk so highly of him, and I see clips on YouTube and Twitter of how good he was. But I always used to think that when he played back in the day, he just obviously got a few headlines for different reasons. But as an actual footballer who played in a wide area and crossed the ball the way he did, created goals, and his passing range, I've been a big fan of David, and I still am. To be fair, I still sort of follow what he's up to, and obviously he's over building himself a football club in Miami at the minute. But if I had to be anyone in Hollywood, it'd be him, mate.
You got the questionable Barnets in common.
Yeah, I mean, I think he carries one or two of them better. I ain't got the looks for a skinhead. That certainly don't work with me. I've had a few highlights and a few mullets and a few shaved bits here and there, but listen, he's a better looking boy than me, so he can carry him off better than me. Darren,
mate, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Really
Thanks a lot for coming on.
Chaz, and listen, I hope everyone is safe and well. Yourself, your family, and obviously all the Bees fans. I hope everyone's keeping well, and we look forward to seeing everyone back at the Hive as soon as possible, mate.